Okay, so let's start building our first budget. So in here, as you know, that right now we've got someone else's, the people who've shared their master data with me, for example, which is my own other account, that's connected to the sheet at the moment. So this all this connection and all this syncing works on a per sheet basis. So next time when you fire up your add-on and you click on that button, the sheet that it's going to create is by default going to use your own master data. So whatever that is. So if you need to use a shared master sheet when you're creating these budgets, you will need to connect it every time you basically are creating a budget. So this is something important, but you need to know that. So here we've got, let's say we start building our first budget and everything. And as you remember that when we look at our master data and we look at all of this, so we have all these parent categories. So we've got all these cost head, which is basically your parent category where you are going to add all these details. So everything that you put in the blue, all this blue section right here is all your parent category. So this is your cost code. So anything that you've got in your cost code, so which is basically it's picking it up from this sheet and it's picking it up from this column right here. So, and always remember, don't go on changing anything in the black text, because black text is all automatically generated, whether it uses a code or a formula in the background. It doesn't matter, but everything that's blue is your input cell. Always remember that. So we are in here and we're going to just start putting in some details, so to speak. So all the blue sections right here at the top are going to give you a total for their subsection. So everything that's underneath it. So you'll see that they are all grouped together. So the total that you see in the blue section will always be the total for that's generated from here. So let me bring in another sample sheet that I can share with you. Give me 1 second. And here. So we've got this sheet. So all this blue section, it is going to give you a total for everything that's actually underneath it. Again, it goes without saying, everything that's blue is something that you can edit or something that needs your input. And everything that you'll see that's grayed out or is black or everything would either have a formula in it, or even if it doesn't have a formula right here, it would basically mean that you need to you can't really do anything about it. It will automatically get generated and changed based on the details. The only exception being this column here, which is your start date, and I'll get to that in a second. But to understand what we are, so we've got this cleaner. Let's say this is our parent head. This is another account. So let's go in here. We've got into our cost code. So whatever cost code or whatever parent accounts that you might have over there will get picked up from this section right here. So you've got cleaner, and under cleaner you've got all sorts of things. So now in here, all sorts of other stuff. I think this is all your hire items and everything that got categorized into incorrectly. So they're all part of hire items. So this is all sample. Just remember that. So you will need to change them and adapt them to the way you want to work them. So we can select all our parent items from here and then start building a budget based on what we put underneath it. So you can put in your notes right next to it. So if you've got any notes that you want to put in manually, this is just a note section. Then you've got your length, width, and height. So if you put in details, let's say I put in 10 by 2 by 15, whatever you want to put that. And AX stands for area multiple. So what that is that you might have something that is exact same dimension, but is more than one. So if it is 5, you put in 5. If you got 6 of those things, this is so that you can cost the items simultaneously as you're budgeting for them. So if you're trying to cost something, you can put in the details for that, put in the number of areas you've got for it, and put in number 6 or 5, 10, whatever quantity of that you need. Now this is again formula. If you delete it, it probably will not come back because this is normal formula cell. All it is doing is multiplying all of them and multiplying that by number 6 so that you get a total area for that section. And this column right here gives you an option to use your cost rate per unit, whatever that you've got in there, either based on quantity or based on your total area. So if you don't want to use this area at all, or if you might have, let's say, window cleaning, and someone's giving you a quote, and that quote says, okay, I'm just going to charge you $5,000 to do your window cleaning for the entire building, whatever that is. So you can select that and you can just go by the fixed quote. But if you've got something where you have the dimensions and you have the number of quantity or the multiples of that area or multiples of that thing, whatever you're trying to budget, you can put in their dimensions, multiply with the number of quantity that you have over there, and then it'll say use area. So if you say yes over here, that is going to multiply the 4,500 by 1,800, and that's how you get 8.1 mil. So in that scenario, I think obviously instead of 4,500, it'll be something like $45 or something like that. So that you know that, whatever the concreting area per square meter or tiling per square meter or carpeting per square meter or whatever, you might have that in here. So you can put in those details, $45 a square meter or square feet or whatever your unit of measurement is. You can put in that, and then this quantity will have no effect on this total. So you'll see that this total again is public. It's no rocket science. It is based on the condition that we put in over here. So stay away from the cells that have formulas in them, and you'll see that these formulas are very basic. Anything that requires a little bit more advanced coding is already coded. So there is some advanced coding behind all of that, which you don't have to worry about because it just gets calculated. So you can then come in and select this section is so that you can select the subcontractor that you want to use. So click on your sheet, go down, select whatever you want to use, whatever the name of the company is, you can allocate it to that company right here. So you know that, okay, this is my budget, and you'll have your subtotal happening right at the top, whatever the subtotal is. You can allocate your subcontractor, and then you can allocate a contingency to that amount. So what's happening here is that it's giving you, okay, whatever that is, I'm not sure whether or not it'll be $45. It could be 50, could be $47, could be $43. And then if based on whatever contingency that you want to allow on that line item, you can allow that right here. And then again, that total will increase by 10%, whatever you've done. As I said, up top right here, it is just basically giving you a all of this up top is all calculated automatically, and it is usually either an average of what's below or a total of what's below. So all these do not have formulas. They are all hard coded, and it happens in the background. And over here, it gives you a total for the total contingency that you've got allowed for this section. So whatever that section is, whether it's cleaners or hire items or whatever, it's giving you the contingency for that item. Then you can add your builder's margin on it, or whatever margin you want to have for your job or the project that you've got. You can put in 10% on that, and it'll add that 10% margin. And remember that at any given time, if you wanted to see what's the total contingency that you allowed for in this section right here, they're right at the bottom. So the last three things over here are dependent upon it gives you the total snapshot of this entire section. So we've got contingency, for example. What is the total contingency that I've got in this entire sheet? Builder's margin, whatever the total builder's margin that I've got in here. So if you change the name of these items, contingency or builder's margin, or you want to call it your project margin or whatever you want to call that, make sure that when you first populate this budget, you'll have to come in and change these names. Now this last one, whatever cost code that you decide to add as to use for GST or VAT for example. Now this doesn't apply to people from US because they don't have any GST or VAT, so they can leave that and it will have no impact whatsoever of what you're trying to do. So all this is doing is calculating whatever GST payments would be here based on what we allocated in our cost code section, whether or not something had GST or VAT in it or not, and it calculates based on the percentage right at the bottom. So if you're not from Australia, New Zealand, or UK, you don't have to worry about it. If you're from US, you don't really have to do anything, just ignore it. And in your first template, say when we create something like that, we've always got this option where once we've done everything and this is a brand new sheet that I want to create, I can pick my template. So you don't have to customize this whole template again and again and again every time you do it. You only have to do that once. So once, spend some time, create these master codes. If you're from Australia, New Zealand, or UK, give them your account heads or GST or VAT percentages, whatever you want to set them up. We set them up here. There are other videos in this playlist that you can watch that show how all this is set up. But once you set it up, you only have to, especially if you've changed all of these details, you will have to go in and put in your, let's say you are doing a townhouse project or an apartment project and you wanted to create a budget that that is suited to that project. So you do that once, you create it once, and you'll have your contingency and your builder's margin here. So you might call contingency as a buffer, like you want to change the name, call it buffer or whatever, but mostly you'll see that contingency is called contingency. You might want to put another cost code over here, no problem, you can do that, but make sure that you come in and select the right contingency over here, because this line is will always calculate contingency, and this line will always calculate your margin on the project or margin on that section. So based on what you put in this column and what you put in your margin column, it is giving you a total for that contingency and your builder's margin right here.